So, I mean, stereotype is a really useful way of sort of imagining how culture works. But culture works in more complicated ways than simple stereotypes, right? I mean, stereotype is the kind of one-sentence soundbite for what happens for these more complicated sort of cultural processes. So if we think about that, you can see a stereotype taking shape as a big cultural ideology, right? A set of expectations about what Indian people or other people are going to do, how they're going to behave, how they're going to live their lives. And that makes its way into the broader kind of cultural infrastructure that just seeps into all of our minds and our hearts and our souls. And so it's an ideology, right, in the sense that it's a set of ideas, concepts, beliefs that become actual lived reality, right? As we make those things real through our daily behaviors, right? They become real. They're not true, they're not real, but they become real because we behave as if they are real. And that then carries real consequences for actual people, right? Because if we believe that that ideological system is real, then people end up structuring and living their lives, right, in ways that reflect that. So there's classic studies, for example, that show Indian kids watching cowboy and Indian westerns, right, of the mid-century. And the Indians all identify with the cowboys, right, because that's the cultural ideology, right? If that's what's good, right? The cowboys are good, they represent America. Who would ever want to be the Indians? And so you find Indian people themselves identifying with some figure, right, that's not native. And so in that context, all Indian lives are always led, you know, in relation to stereotypes that are floating around in that bigger cultural infrastructure. So you find Indian women thinking, do I have to kind of act out a Pocahontas kind of thing? You find Indian men saying, do I have to act out, you know, as if I'm some kind of great communal environmentalist, spiritualist kind of person, right? That's the stereotype I would grab onto if I was going to grab onto a stereotype. You find Indian people saying, well, there's stereotypes about savagery. Maybe I should act that out in my own life and make it real and material. So it creates these problems for people as they go about living their daily lives. There was a period in my teaching career where students thought they were being analytical by using the term stereotype or bias, right? They would look at a text, they would say, well, that's a biased text. And I'd say, well, duh, every text has a bias, has a position to it, you know? Or that's a stereotype. And they would imagine, right, that they were doing an analytical kind of critical move. They were saying something that was smart and intelligent. And what I tried to tell them is, like, actually, to name something as a stereotype is not sufficient, right? To name something as a stereotype then requires you go beyond it and ask yourself how it functions as a kind of cultural vehicle, right? How it empowers some people and how it disempowers people, right? How it carries a certain kind of weight, right? That advantages some people, it disadvantages some people. So it seems to me whenever we're talking about stereotypes, right, it's not enough to simply name it. It's always the case that we have to dig deeper into it and sort of get to the complicated questions of culture.